Hi guys. I'm not sure how to start this video really, but I do want to start out by saying if I have makeup under my eyes, if I look a mess, please excuse me, excuse that, because I have filmed this a few times and I have cried quite a bit. So if I have makeup under my eyes, please excuse that. But I'm not really sure how to begin, so I guess I'll just go right ahead and say it. My daughter's dead. She died in my arms after she was born. Around 21 weeks gestation, I'd say, there was a blood clot that caused me to bleed internally, and it forced us to induce labor early. It forced us to induce labor too early, and my daughter wasn't yet old enough or strong enough to survive outside of the womb. And so I had to give birth to her knowing that she was going to die, and I gave birth to her. She was born alive, and she died in my arms, and we watched her suffer, and we watched her die. And the reason why I'm sharing this with all of you, even though I don't really want to, is because I want to shed light on the horrible, horrible things that this abortion ban is doing to people. I want to show people that it's hurting them, that it's killing them, and that it's destroying people's lives. And I'm hoping that by sharing our story with you, that I can change some hearts and some minds today. So that's why I'm here. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. Around, I'd say, week 9 of my pregnancy, early on, I had a threatened miscarriage. And for those of you who don't know, a threatened miscarriage is bleeding in early pregnancy that signals a potential for a miscarriage. So it is not a miscarriage. You essentially still have a healthy baby with a strong heartbeat. You just have bleeding that signals the potential for a problem. So I had that in week 9. And in the weeks that followed, I had very heavy bleeding on and off. And each time I bled, it was very dangerous because I do have a bleeding disorder that can be life-threatening. So it was very scary for us each time. And I really didn't feel good each time that I bled. I felt horrible. But 3 weeks after the initial threatened miscarriage, I was diagnosed with a subchorionic hemorrhage via ultrasound. And for those of you who don't know, a subchorionic hemorrhage is a blood clot that exists between the uterine wall and the material surrounding the embryo. So basically, it's a blood clot that lies at the point at which the placenta attaches. And it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that this occurs when the egg is implanted. So I was diagnosed with that hemorrhage. And for a whole month after that, I did not bleed. So I was very encouraged, very happy. I thought, like, yay, this is it. Like, the doctors were right. Because initially the doctors said that a lot of people with these hemorrhages, they bleed out. The hemorrhages resolve themselves and they bleed out. And then they continue to have a healthy pregnancy and everything's fine. So I was like, thank God the doctors were right. Like, this is going to be okay. Then the day after my next appointment, the appointment that happened after I was diagnosed with the hemorrhage, a day after that appointment, it came back. And I knew in my gut at that point that something was wrong because I felt like I was dying, and I was. I had what I perceived to be god-awful period cramping, which is not normal in pregnancy. I had a migraine so severe I couldn't open my eyes. I had contractions that I felt were timed. I felt very faint, and the bleeding had significantly increased, which is saying something because it was pretty bad to begin with. And so I obviously went to the ER, and I should point out that I went to an ER that was closer to my home because the high-risk clinic that I went to for my appointments and things like that was or is an hour and a half away from my actual home. So I did go to an ER closer to my house, and they did a cervical exam, and they said that my cervix was closed, but I later learned that they did not check all of my blood levels to see if any were low, and they did not do an ultrasound. And if they had, they would have seen that I was bleeding internally, which they didn't see. So they cleared me and they sent me home. And my water broke 24 hours after that. And this is where it gets traumatic. It was late at night, not like super late, but like later at night. My husband was at work. I was home alone with my 2-year-old son, and it was 6 o'clock at night. And I know that it was 6 o'clock at night because every single day that I am home alone with my son at 6 o'clock at night, if I happen to be home alone with my son at 6 o'clock at night, I have the most horrible panic attack of my life. So it happened at 6 o'clock at night. I was giving my son a bath, and my water broke. I didn't know that it was my water because it was so tinged with blood, but it immediately soaked through my underwear, soaked through my pants, went onto the floor, started covering the floor. My son was in the bathtub, and I didn't know what was going on, so I obviously went to the toilet and pulled everything down, sat down, it continued to come out. And it was very dramatic, but then once I stood up from the toilet, it was like one of the scariest things I've ever seen. Blood just started pouring out of me, like shh, 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 like just, it was all over the floor, all over me, and I'm trying not to cry because I've already cried so much. I'm so dehydrated. But my poor little boy started screaming. He started screaming, and the blood just kept coming, and I knew that like this is probably life-threatening blood. So I tried so hard to get out of that bathroom and get to the phone because I didn't want to die in front of my son. I didn't want to die in front of my little boy. So I tried so hard to get to the phone because I didn't know what to do. And we went to the ER. Hopefully my makeup isn't running. We went to the ER, and I should point out that we went to the, oh God, I'm crying so bad. We went to the ER, and I should point out that we went to the ER that was closest to, I should have gotten a tissue. That was closest to, no, I'm sorry. We went to the ER that was closest to my high-risk clinic, so we did not go to the ER that we had just been to that was near my home. We went to the one near the high-risk clinic. And they were great. They got me in right away. They checked. They gave me fluids. They gave me blood tests, checked my blood levels. They did a cervical exam right away. And initially they said that they were encouraged because the blood had come down to a slow drip. So I turned to my husband and I said, I feel stupid for coming here. I'm obviously just bleeding again. Then the tech came in for an ultrasound. And the tech came in for an ultrasound. And the first thing she said was, there's hardly any amniotic fluid in here. And when she said that, I knew that it was over. I knew that we were done. If my cervix had been opened, there may have been a chance. If it was just my cervix, there may have been a chance that the baby could have made it. But as soon as she said there's no amniotic fluid, I knew that was it. They said there was hardly any amniotic fluid left, that my cervix was open, and that I was bleeding internally, and that I was experiencing placental abruption. And for those of you who don't know what placental abruption is it's when the placenta rips away from the wall. And I think in most cases, and in my case, it causes internal bleeding. And for those of you who don't know, this is a life-threatening condition. And if it's not like resolved medically, then the person will die. And so basically I was dying, and the complicated part about all of this is that I was dying because I was bleeding internally, but my daughter, my baby, was so healthy. She had the strongest heartbeat ever. Everything looked wonderful. Like throughout all of this, she was healthy. She wasn't the problem. It was all of the membranes and the placenta and everything surrounding her. Throughout all of this drama, she was completely healthy. But the problem was that I was bleeding internally and dying. And if she didn't get out of me, if we didn't take her out of me, then I would have died. And by association, she would have died with me. So we had to get her out. And by getting her out, she would die because she was too young to survive outside of the womb. But if we kept her in, I would die. So that's the situation that we were looking at. So obviously we had to get her out. And by getting her out, legally, I was electing to have an abortion. And they gave me a number of options to do this. The first option they gave me was a DNE, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. A DNE is a surgical procedure that they use to remove the baby. My second option that they gave me is that they said that they could induce labor, which would mean that I would have to go through the whole thing. They would induce labor. I would go through the god-awful pain, the contractions. I would push her out only to have her be born alive, and then she would have to die afterwards. So I would have to do all of that and go through all of that knowing that I was going to watch my daughter die in the end. And the third option they gave me, which is just hopeless, they said, you could try to wait it out if you really, really feel in your heart that you should try or that you want to try, but it's hopeless to wait it out. And what they meant by wait it out is they said, we could try to wait, sit on it, just let you lay here and bleed, and we could see maybe if we could get your daughter to reach a gestational age that she could survive outside of the womb. But basically, if we do that, you will die, is basically what they told me. They said, you can try, but you're going to die anyway. And they basically laid it out for me, and they said, if you want to try to wait to see if your daughter can reach a gestational age where she can survive outside of the womb, then here's what's going to happen. You are going to be admitted to the ICU. You are either going to contract a deadly infection, and then you're going to die, or you're just going to die from bleeding. And if we can manage to save your life, which is a big if, then you will most likely need a full hysterectomy in order for your life to be saved. And you'll never be able to have another child again. I want to make it clear to all of you that I live in Wisconsin. And in this state, we take the life of the mother into consideration, meaning that if the mother's life is in jeopardy, then an abortion is warranted. It is legal and it is allowed. But if I had lived in a different state that did not take the life of the mother into consideration, I would have died. And there are plenty of states in this country that don't take the life of the mother into consideration, and there are plenty of states that would have let me die. And I want to point out to all of you, especially all of you who are pro-life, that this is happening all over the country. I am not an isolated story. This is not rare. People are dying all over the country because of this abortion ban. And not only this, but I could have died anyway because time was wasted. In states such as Wisconsin, where they do take the life of the mother into consideration, you have to go through multiple procedures before the medical team can even intervene. Multiple doctors have to diagnose your condition in order for them to be able to save your life or do anything, which wastes a heck of a lot of time. I had to go through 2 or 3 ultrasounds, wasting precious seconds, bleeding out. I easily could have died, and so much time was wasted. And you know what happens when you waste time and someone is dying? They die. Which means that even in states that take the life of the mother into consideration, people are still dying in those states as well. From the second that my water broke that night with my son, till the moment that she was in my arms and she died, my daughter was thrashing. And when I say thrashing, I don't mean just moving, just kicking, just a little tap. I mean convulsing, shaking, thrashing like an animal, fighting for life like she was drowning. From the moment my water broke all the way up until the moment that she was born and she died in my arms, she thrashed like that. And that thrashing plays on loop in my nightmares. My daughter's name is Ember, as in the flame. Ember Rose Maria McCormick. And I am very proud of that name because the name Ember is the female equivalent to the name Jeremiah. And Jeremiah and the almond tree is my favorite part of the Bible. And I'm just going to paraphrase here. I'm not going word for word, so please don't police me. But God came to the prophet Jeremiah and he showed him the vision of an almond tree. And God said, Jeremiah, what do you see? And Jeremiah said, I see the rod of an almond tree. And God said, for you have seen well, because I am watching over my word to perform it. I'm a very religious person, but with that being said, I'm a very liberal religious person. I'm a leftist. I'm not right. I'm a Democrat. I believe that so many things in the Bible are wrong, and I believe that they hurt a lot of people. And I believe that this abortion ban is wrong. Every single aspect of it is so wrong, and it's hurting so many people across this entire country. And I believe that people should have the freedom to choose. I don't believe that things happen for a reason. I can't believe that. I can't believe that my good God would make bad things happen to good people for a reason. But I do believe that if this had to happen, that God wants me to use the aftermath to show people the other side of this. And in my soul, I believe that that is Ember's purpose. For those of you who aren't aware, an ember is a flame. It's a flame that refuses to burn out when hope is lost. In the dark, it's the light that stays. It's the hope that endures. And it can never be broken. It can never be burned out. Not really. Because it's the part of us, it's the flame that exists inside of us and that has existed inside of us before the world ever touched us. Before the world ever hurt us, before the world ever showed us pain. That light, that flame, that light within us is the core of who we are. And so no matter what happens to us, no matter how badly we're hurt or broken, it will always be there. Always. If only we can just remember. Ember's flame, my baby girl, my Ember. Ember's flame is still burning. It never went out. It's right here with me. And it always will be. It will never burn out. And when we love one another, when we extend understanding and empathy towards each other, when we look at things from other people's perspective, instead of looking at everything from our own narrow point of view, then we carry the ember with us. We carry that hope. We carry that light. We carry the best version of ourselves. Because that's what we were put on this earth to do, to care. To care about other people more than our own, more than ourselves. And so I'm asking, I'm begging anyone who is pro-life, anyone who thinks I'm wrong, anyone who thinks that this abortion ban is justified, I'm asking you to please carry the ember with you. Step outside of yourself. Extend understanding and empathy and compassion. And look at what you're doing and look at who you're truly hurting before you vote. And to my daughter, my baby girl that I've always wanted, who was so beautiful. She was so beautiful. To my daughter, I love you. And I'm so sorry. And I hope that when you see what I'm doing with what happened to us, I hope that you're proud of me. Because I'm so proud of you for fighting as hard as you did, for as long as you did. Your dad and I are both so proud of you. And when life gets really hard, and I want to give up, like I have lately, I'll remember the ember within myself. And I'll think of you. And I will vow to fight as hard as you did for the rest of my life. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye.